What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest superstars comes face to face with a host who's lost all sense of boundaries? You won't believe what unfolds when Jennifer Lopez sits down for what should have been a routine late-night appearance, only to find herself in the crosshairs of the most uncomfortable interview in television history. Tonight's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live was supposed to be about promoting her latest project, but instead, it became a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral completely out of control. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when two massive egos collide on live television. The tension was palpable from the moment Jennifer Lopez walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage. What the audience didn't know was that behind the scenes, things had already started to go sideways during the pre-interview prep. Sources close to the production reveal that Kimmel had been briefed on several topics that were explicitly off-limits, including her recent personal relationships and ongoing legal battles with her business ventures. But as we've seen time and time again, Jimmy Kimmel has a history of pushing boundaries when he thinks it'll get him ratings. Lopez, dressed in a stunning emerald green dress that commanded attention, took her seat with the practiced grace of someone who's done thousands of interviews. The audience erupted in applause, completely unaware they were about to witness television history for all the wrong reasons. Kimmel, with his trademark smirk already in place, seemed to have something brewing behind his eyes that suggested this wasn't going to be the typical softball celebrity interview his publicists had promised. "Jennifer, welcome back to the show," Kimmel began, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone that regular viewers have come to recognize. "You look absolutely stunning tonight. Though I have to ask, is this the same dress you wore to that charity event last month? Or do you just have really good taste in recycling designer gowns?" The comment landed like a lead balloon. Lopez's smile flickered for just a moment, but she maintained her composure with the professionalism that's made her a star for over 2 decades. "Actually, Jimmy, this is brand new, but I appreciate your concern for my wardrobe choices," she responded, her voice carrying just the slightest edge that anyone paying attention would have caught. What happened next revealed just how tone-deaf Kimmel can be when he's fishing for a reaction. Instead of moving on to safer territory, he doubled down with a comment that had the audience shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "Well, with all the financial troubles your companies have been having lately, I just wanted to make sure you weren't having to cut corners anywhere. I mean, we've all seen the headlines about the lawsuits and the business deals gone wrong." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lopez's publicist, sitting in the green room, was reportedly frantically trying to get someone's attention to cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. This was exactly the kind of moment that Kimmel thrives on, catching his guests off guard and watching them squirm under the spotlight. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you referring to?" Lopez asked, her voice now carrying a warning that anyone with half a brain would have recognized as a signal to back off. Her posture had shifted from relaxed to defensive, and the smile had completely disappeared from her face. The audience, sensing the shift in energy, had gone from enthusiastic to uncomfortably quiet. Kimmel, apparently mistaking her discomfort for weakness, pressed forward with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. "Oh, come on, Jennifer. The whole business with your skincare line, the investors pulling out, the allegations about misleading marketing claims. I mean, it's been all over the entertainment news for weeks. Surely you knew we'd have to talk about it eventually." What Kimmel failed to realize in his quest for viral moments was that he was poking a bear who had been dealing with these issues privately and professionally behind the scenes. Lopez had been working tirelessly with her legal team to resolve these matters, and the last thing she expected was to be ambushed on live television by someone who was supposed to be promoting her work, not tearing down her business empire. The silence that followed was deafening. Lopez stared at Kimmel with a look that could have melted steel, while he sat there with that infuriating smirk, clearly pleased with himself for creating what he thought was must-see television. What he didn't anticipate was that he had just lit a fuse that was about to explode in spectacular fashion, and there would be no going back from what was about to unfold. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 15 seconds, Lopez leaned forward in her chair, her voice dropping to a dangerously low register that anyone who knew her would recognize as a warning sign. "Jimmy, I came here tonight as a professional courtesy to promote my work and support your show. I did not come here to be ambushed with tabloid gossip and half-truths about my business affairs." But Kimmel, riding high on what he perceived as a ratings goldmine unfolding before his eyes, made the catastrophic decision to push even harder. The band leader was frantically making cutthroat gestures from the side of the stage, but Kimmel was completely focused on his prey, like a shark that had tasted blood in the water. "Half-truths?" Kimmel shot back, his voice dripping with fake incredulity. "Jennifer, these aren't rumors we're talking about. There are court documents, SEC filings, investor complaints. I mean, when multiple business partners are accusing you of breach of contract and your own investors are demanding their money back, at what point do we stop calling it gossip and start calling it accountability?" The audience was now completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't the playful banter that usually characterized celebrity interviews on late-night television. This was a public execution, and everyone in that studio knew it. Lopez's hands, which had been resting casually on the armrests of her chair, were now gripping them so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "Accountability?" Lopez repeated, her voice rising for the first time since the interview began. "You want to talk about accountability, Jimmy? Let's talk about your accountability as a host. Let's talk about how you agreed to certain parameters for this interview, how your producers assured my team that we would be discussing my upcoming projects and my charitable work, not dragging me through a kangaroo court of unsubstantiated business allegations." The camera operators were having a field day, zooming in on both faces as the tension reached a boiling point. Kimmel's smirk was starting to waver as he realized that Lopez wasn't going to crumble under pressure the way he had expected. Instead, she was fighting back, and she was doing it with the precision of someone who had been dealing with media manipulation for decades. "I think the audience deserves to know when the celebrities they admire might not be as squeaky clean as they appear," Kimmel continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was digging his own professional grave with every word. "I mean, isn't that what journalism is supposed to be about? Asking the tough questions that others won't ask?" Lopez let out a laugh that was devoid of any humor, a sound that sent chills through everyone present. "Journalism? Jimmy, you're a comedian who tells jokes between commercial breaks. Don't confuse entertainment with investigative reporting. And don't confuse character assassination with tough questions." The director in the control room was frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue to unfold. The social media team was already watching Twitter explode with real-time reactions from viewers who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This was the kind of television moment that would be talked about for years, but not in the way that anyone involved would want to remember. Kimmel, perhaps finally sensing that he had crossed a line from which there might be no return, attempted to backtrack with all the grace of a freight train trying to make a U-turn. "Look, Jennifer, I'm not trying to attack you personally. I'm just saying that when you're in the public eye, these kinds of questions are fair game. Your fans invest in you emotionally and sometimes financially, and they have a right to know what's going on." "Fair game?" Lopez stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the stunned silence of the studio. "You think ambushing me with legally sensitive information that you clearly don't understand is fair game? You think violating the agreement we had about this interview is fair game?" The audience was now completely captivated by what was unfolding before them. This wasn't scripted drama or manufactured controversy. This was real, raw, and absolutely explosive. Lopez was standing at the edge of her seat, looking down at Kimmel, who suddenly seemed much smaller than he had moments before, when he thought he had the upper hand. But just as it seemed like the situation couldn't get any more intense, Kimmel made the decision that would seal his fate and push this confrontation into legendary territory. "You know what, Jennifer?" Kimmel said, leaning back in his chair with a smugness that would haunt him for the rest of his career. "Maybe the real problem here isn't that I'm asking tough questions. Maybe the real problem is that you can't handle being held accountable for your actions. I mean, this is exactly the kind of defensive behavior that makes people wonder, what you're really hiding." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every person in that studio, from the camera operators to the audience members to the production staff, knew that Kimmel had just crossed a line that should never be crossed. Lopez's face went through a series of expressions that ranged from shock to fury, to something that looked almost like pity for the man who had just destroyed his own career on live television. "What I'm hiding?" Lopez's voice was now vibrating with barely controlled rage. "Jimmy, let me tell you what I'm not hiding. I'm not hiding behind jokes and sarcasm when I make mistakes. I'm not hiding behind a desk and a fake smile while I destroy people's reputations for entertainment. And I'm certainly not hiding the fact that you are completely out of line and completely unprofessional." The audience was now murmuring among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this interview had taken. Some people were pulling out their phones to record what was happening, sensing that they were witnessing television history in the making. The energy in the room had shifted from entertained to genuinely concerned about how this was going to end. Kimmel, apparently unable to recognize when he should stop digging his own grave, pressed forward with the kind of reckless abandon that can only come from someone who has completely lost perspective. "Unprofessional? Jennifer, I'm doing my job. I'm asking the questions that millions of Americans want answered. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye." That was the moment when Jennifer Lopez's composure finally shattered completely. The professional mask that she had worn for decades in the entertainment industry fell away, revealing the raw, unfiltered anger of someone who had been pushed beyond their breaking point by a bully who had mistaken cruelty for cleverness. "Your job?" Lopez's voice rose to a level that could probably be heard in the parking lot. "Your job is to entertain people, Jimmy. Your job is to make them laugh and feel good about themselves. Your job is not to destroy people's livelihoods based on incomplete information and tabloid rumors. Your job is not to violate agreements and ambush your guests with character assassination disguised as journalism." She was now standing fully upright, towering over Kimmel, who was still sitting in his chair, apparently frozen by the realization that he had awakened a force that he was completely unprepared to handle. The cameras were capturing every moment of this meltdown, every expression of rage and indignation that was pouring out of one of Hollywood's most powerful women. "And let me tell you something else about your job, Jimmy," Lopez continued, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who had built an empire from nothing and wasn't about to let a late-night comedian tear it down. "Your job is supposed to be about respect. Respect for your guests, respect for your audience, and respect for the platform you've been given. But instead, you've turned this show into a platform for your own ego and your own twisted need to tear down successful people." The silence that followed was different from the earlier silences. This wasn't the quiet of anticipation or shock. This was the silence of a room full of people who had just witnessed something that they knew would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Even Kimmel seemed to finally understand that he had pushed too far, but it was far too late for any kind of meaningful apology or backtracking. "Jennifer, I think maybe we should," Kimmel began, but Lopez cut him off with a gesture that was both dismissive and final. "No, Jimmy, we shouldn't do anything. You've made your choices tonight, and now you get to live with the consequences. You wanted to create a moment, and congratulations, you've succeeded. But the moment you've created isn't the one you thought you were making." The band leader was frantically signaling for commercial break, But Lopez wasn't finished. She had more to say, and after what she had endured for the past 20 minutes, she was going to say it whether the cameras were rolling or not. You see, Jimmy, the difference between you and me is that when I make a mistake, I own it. I don't hide behind jokes or blame other people or try to justify my actions by claiming I was just doing my job. I take responsibility. I make amends, and I move forward. But you? You've just shown everyone exactly who you really are when you think you have power over someone. The confrontation had now reached a level of intensity that was making everyone in the studio genuinely uncomfortable. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a real-time destruction of professional relationships and possibly careers. Broadcast lived to millions of viewers who were glued to their screens, unable to look away from the carnage. Lopez took a deep breath, and for a moment, it seemed like she might be preparing to sit back down and attempt to salvage what was left of the interview. But then Kimmel, in what can only be described as a moment of complete professional suicide, decided to make one final comment that would be replayed on social media for years to come. Well, Jennifer, I guess we know now why your business partners have been having problems with you. If this is how you handle a simple interview, I can only imagine how you handle board meetings. The gasp that went up from the audience was audible even through the television speakers. It was the kind of collective intake of breath that happens when people witness something so shocking that their bodies react before their minds can process what they've just heard. Lopez's face went through a transformation that was almost supernatural. From rage to something that looked almost like calm, but a calm that was infinitely more terrifying than her anger had been. "You know what, Jimmy?" Lopez said, her voice now deadly quiet. "I want to thank you. I want to thank you for showing me and everyone watching exactly who you are. You're not a comedian. You're not a host. You're not even particularly clever. You're just a small, insecure man who gets his kicks from trying to tear down people who have accomplished more than you ever will." She began walking toward the edge of the stage, her heels clicking against the floor with a finality that echoed through the stunned silence of the studio. But she wasn't done talking. She turned back to face Kimmel one last time, and what she said next would become the most quoted moment of the entire debacle. "And for the record, Jimmy, my business partners don't have problems with me. They have problems with people like you, people who spread misinformation, people who think they can destroy others without consequences, people who confuse cruelty with comedy. The difference is, they learn to deal with people like you professionally. I'm still learning." The cameras captured every step as Lopez made her way toward the exit, her posture straight and her head held high despite the chaos she was leaving behind. Kimmel sat frozen in his chair, apparently finally understanding the magnitude of what he had just done to himself and his show. The audience was completely silent now, watching this unprecedented moment unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Jennifer, wait!" Kimmel called out desperately, but his voice cracked on the words, betraying the panic that was beginning to set in as he realized that this wasn't going to end with handshakes and publicity photos. Lopez paused at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. "No, Jimmy. I'm done waiting. I waited for you to show some professionalism. I waited for you to show some respect. I waited for you to remember that we're both human beings trying to make a living in this industry. But you've made it clear that none of those things matter to you, so I'm done waiting." With that, Jennifer Lopez walked off the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, leaving behind a host who looked like he had just been hit by a freight train and an audience that was still processing what they had just witnessed. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing Kimmel's face as the reality of the situation began to sink in. His trademark smirk was completely gone, replaced by a look of genuine panic and confusion. The show's production team finally managed to cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were being shared across every social media platform, with hashtags like "You Team Jalo" and Kimmel meltdown trending worldwide. Entertainment reporters were already drafting articles about the most explosive, late-night television moment in recent memory. By the time the show returned from commercial break, Kimmel had managed to compose himself enough to deliver a stilted monologue about difficult guests and the challenges of live television, but his heart clearly wasn't in it. The remaining segments of the show felt hollow and awkward, with the host visibly shaken by what had just transpired. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours, social media was flooded with support for Lopez and criticism of Kimmel's handling of the interview. Entertainment industry insiders began speaking out about the host's pattern of aggressive interviewing tactics, and several celebrities publicly announced that they would no longer appear on his show. The ratings for Jimmy Kimmel Live began a steep decline that would continue for months, as viewers made their displeasure known with their remote controls. Jennifer Lopez, meanwhile, emerged from the controversy with her reputation not only intact, but enhanced. Her refusal to tolerate disrespectful treatment resonated with millions of viewers who had grown tired of seeing successful women torn down for entertainment value. The incident became a watershed moment in discussions about media accountability and the treatment of guests on talk shows. The confrontation that was supposed to generate ratings and viral moments did exactly that, but not in the way that Jimmy Kimmel had intended. Instead of creating a memorable interview moment, he had created a masterclass in how quickly a career can be damaged when ego trumps professionalism. The night that was supposed to be about promoting Jennifer Lopez's latest project became the night that Jimmy Kimmel learned that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed.